Unique opportunity for me and you today, listeners. I have got the man with two names, Charles Ryan. I'm sure you've never heard that before, ever. Here from Cal-Berkeley. Charles, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm super excited about this. You probably hear me say that about every person we interview. I get that. And I'm genuinely super excited about every one of our guests that we have. But today I get the opportunity to really meet someone new. Charles and I have met each other here and there. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
Random track meets?
As the game would proceed, yes.
Exactly. So excited to learn more about you. One of the first things I need to learn, so you every Friday, every week, you and three other awesome people, you guys get together on this YouTube show. You need to go watch the show if you have not seen this. It's called Athletics LLC. It's you, the great Mouse Holloway, the great Chris. All these people are great. Chris Huffins, and then of course Marissa Chu, who was definitely a great person before this season, but has really shown her value and worth this season with this coaches collab on Facebook. She is, boy, she might be providing more value to the coaching body than maybe anybody in a long time. I'm super proud of her. But you guys do this show, and they call you Chuck. So do you go by Charles or do you go by Chuck?
Honestly, it depends on when you know me and from why. It's always been a very interesting thing in my life. All of my family members and old associates and friends all know me as Chucky. I think in the professional realm, jobs and interviews, obviously everyone calls me Charles. My athletes usually refer to me by my last name, which is Ryan. People have always told me I look more like a Ryan than a Charles. I don't know what that means, but that's what they say. So, I answer to all. It's really doesn't bother me at all one way or the other.
I think for now I have earned the right to call you Charles, and maybe by the end of this, I'll learn Chuck. I don't know. I want to earn the right.
I hear you. I'm good with it.
I'm such a terrible host. These are probably questions I should have asked before we hit the record button. What do you want me to call you?
No worries at all. No worries at all. And as far as the Athletics LLC thing goes, it's been a lot of fun. I'm definitely enjoying my time with Chris and Mike, and obviously Marissa is the perfect person to wrangle the three of us and do the hosting of that specific thing. It was kind of, at least from my perspective, it was kind of impromptu idea that Huff and Marissa and Mike had been talking about for a while. And I was lucky enough to be someone that they, felt could bring value to the show and have the relationship that I do with those people. So it's been a ball. And I think what we're doing is not just interesting, but on many levels, I think it's important. And as far as the stuff that Marissa has been, had the vision to do with the coaches collab, I mean, it's invaluable. And if there's one person in our industry that has taken full advantage of the current situation and found some useful way to help people with it, it's Marissa Chu. So lots of respect for Marissa and everybody connected to that project.
I think you were on the webinar, the Zoom call last week, the one about networking and things like that.
Yep.
And it was interesting. The topic of networking came up, and some people were asking the question of like, how do you network? How do you authentically network? And a lot of great answers were coming back about, giving value. Don't seek out a mentor. Don't seek out, someone that you maybe desire a position similar to ask for stuff. And I kept thinking about Marissa the whole time. I was like, man, she is doing networking in the sense of her whole goal with this has been give.
That's right.
And because of this, she has increased her network, 100 times over. She
That's
now
right.
knows everybody. She is really the definition. I defined networking in that webinar. Networking is something that when you're doing it right, when you're not trying to network, when you're just being authentic. Yeah. Well, let's start, Charles. Let's go back. Oh, first of all, before we do that, Athletics LLC, you got to go to YouTube and just search for Athletics LLC. It'll bring up all the videos there. If you want the audio only version, I have been so blessed here at Gill Athletics that we actually rebroadcast the audio portion of those episodes a week or so plus after. So definitely, if you want the video, and it is funny, especially when you guys have Otto in there and some of the guest appearances you've had. Guest stars, they are stars, man. It's been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to the rest of them that you have going. So make sure you go check out Athletics LLC. So Charles, let's take a step back. You are if I remember right, you are a West Coaster first and foremost. Is that where you grew up? Was in California?
100%. Born and raised in California. Actually born in Southern California. I was born in Anaheim, but I was raised in the Bay. I've lived in the Bay Area. My family moved back up here when I was 2 years old, and I stayed here my entire childhood.
Now, that might have been the only time you spent that much time, because we're going to find a little theme here. It seems like you cannot decide on East Coast or West Coast here. So you end up you start out as a Bruin at UCLA. Was that growing up in California? Is that like a dream school for kids to go, that in USC, I assume, or?
I'm sure that UCLA was a dream for many, many kids. It was definitely the place where my family went to school. But honestly, I had absolutely no intention or care to go to UCLA. Now, when I say that respectfully. My mother is a graduate of UCLA. My aunt, my uncle, like my family goes to school at UCLA.
You guys are Bruins.
Absolutely. But for me, I was always, the rebel child, if you would, and I literally had no interest in going to UCLA.
But you went.
I did. The only reason I went to UCLA was one reason and one reason only, and that was John Smith. John Smith recruited me very, very late. I was the California State runner-up in the 110 hurdles. And the reason that my recruitment was moving so slow was twofold. One, I blew out my ACL in my sophomore year of high school. And
doing track, or were you a football guy?
Nah, man, I blew out my ACL. I played about every sport you can imagine. Seriously. Football, baseball, basketball, soccer, swimming. Wow. I did everything. And I blew out my ACL in a dunk contest at my high school for a team that I refused to play for. I played AAU traveling basketball, but the school I was attending at that time, there was for lack of a better way, there was a racial issue going on with the basketball team, and I wanted no part of it. So I played AAU, but I wouldn't play for the school team. And I was in a dunk contest at the school, and I blew out my ACL doing a free throw line dunk.
How come I knew it was going to be basketball? That's like the bane of every track coach. Please don't go play pickup basketball.
No, please don't. Absolutely not. Please do not. I implore my kids on their, what do you call it? Their active recovery.
Right. So at least this will give us a little vision here of the dunk contest where you unfortunately blew out your knee. Was it at least a really cool dunk? Like, would it have been awesome?
It was. I mean, I used to have, prior to my knee surgery, I had about a 42-inch vertical. And I mean, if you want to be super nerdy about anything, I set the national high jump record in USATF in 8th grade. I jumped 6'5" in the high jump.
Holy cow!
I could jump. It was actually 6'4 3/4 to be official.
Well, you are a track coach.
Yeah, I had that record, and I was literally doing a free throw line dunk, and I came down wrong. I made the dunk. I came down wrong. Knee went to the right, body went to the left, and it was a wrap. Called the ambulance, wheeled me out of there. It was crazy. And so, yeah, it was really, really bad.
This may be a terribly dumb question. Did you win? Was that the last dunk?
I had already won. I was showing off at that point. I was like, y'all don't think I can do this dunk. I'm going to just do it just to show that I can do it. There's a VHS of it somewhere in probably my mother's attic or something like that.
You just blew the minds of every 25-year-old that's listening right now. A VHS, no one knows.
Right, no one has any idea what I'm talking about.
A teammate of mine came in today and she goes, "Hey, do you have a CD-ROM player?" And I was like, "CD-ROM player? Like, come on, man, get out of here." You better stream that to me or something.
So yeah, it was, so that, I mean, that's how that happened. So, I had to have the total reconstruction, all of that stuff.
Mm.
This was around the same time that Jerry Rice had blown out his knee. And so the doctor that I had was connected to the doctor that he had. So
Oh, wow.
they did a really good job. But I mean, like, if you ever see my knee, this is, old school. I have this huge scar. Like today, you do ACLs, you can barely see that there's anything. Like huge scar across my front where my patella is, and a lot of bad rehab. I'd say the surgery was great, but the rehab was bad. I didn't move. I didn't stand on my leg. I didn't walk for 2-3 months. And today we know as soon as you have that surgery, you start moving. And so it took a long time for me to get back to any kind of a reputable level, as an athlete, obviously.
Yeah, I
But
wonder how many careers were cut shorter because of what we didn't know
oh
early
yeah,
2000s, 80s, 90s, et cetera. We know just so much more, not only about the actual surgery, but the post-surgery, what you're supposed to do to get back up and active. So, well, that was terrible. Obviously, you were able to bounce back somewhat. You went
yeah.
to
So
UCLA under the great John Smith.
yeah, so John brings me to UCLA, and then in the middle of my I redshirted my freshman year because I tore my hamstring. And then in the middle of my sophomore season in the fall, John was pushed out at UCLA. And so for us, for a handful of us, like that was, that was an unforgivable sin. And
Mm.
I asked out and I transferred to the University of South Carolina.
So here's our first. I mean, I don't think you could have gone any farther than Los Angeles, all the way up to Columbia, South Carolina. Was it because? So you mentioned John Smith, and I mean, come on, man, top 5 coach of all time, right? The guy's amazing.
Absolutely.
Was the draw to South Carolina another top 5 coach, Curtis Fry?
It was, for me, I was obviously a short hurdler, sprint hurdler by trade, and at that time, Coach Fry was a huge name in the business. But as a 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid, honestly, I didn't know, he was just another coach.
Really?
I didn't understand my sport at that time, and I mean, I knew his name, but I didn't understand his resume or anything like that. So the draw to me was less about Curtis Fry. It was more about Curtis Fry coaches Allen Johnson. Curtis Fry coaches Terrence Trammell, and I'm going to go train with those guys.
That
Like
makes
it
sense.
was 100%. I want to train with those two people.
Right.
It was very singularly focused for me. That was what it was about, and just the timing of it. So I transferred in the summer of 2002. So I had just watched the women's team at South Carolina win their first national championship in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Hmm.
And, I had friends on that team. LaShinda Demas was on that team. Like, so I had a familiarity with those people.
Oh,
And I,
from back home.
yeah, because
Ah,
Shinda was a West Coast kid.
right, 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 right.
And so, to me, like, that's where I felt I needed to be. And that's was wholly, where I ended up. The only other school that I was seriously considering at that time was the University of Tennessee, where Vince Anderson was at the time.
Mm.
And Vince Anderson, if you're talking about, my recruitment during that time, Vince Anderson was the coach I wanted to run for, but the people I wanted to be around were at South Carolina,
Right.
and so that's ultimately how I made that decision.
Well, you couldn't have been faulted for either of those coaches, Fry or Anderson, man.
Exactly.
Holy cow. Geez. Well, you've been around some John Smith and Curtis Fry. That's
I have been fortunate enough to be raised in this sport by absolute legends, and
yeah.
all of
Well,
them have influenced me as an athlete at the time, and as the coach that I ultimately came to be. Like honestly, me and Curtis Fry enjoy a fantastic relationship now as professional colleagues, but my time there, we didn't get along at all, to be honest. And so what happened was the day I graduated, like walked across the stage, the next day I put my stuff in the car and I drove to Knoxville, Tennessee to train with Vince Anderson for the 2004 Olympic trials. And so like I was out of there very, very fast. And so I did end up getting a very short time in my life to be trained by Vince as well. So yeah,
what
John
was
Smith, Curtis
your
Fry, Vince Anderson.
And I don't know Curtis Fry as an athlete. I know him, I coached in the SEC, so I know him as a peer, as a coach, and now I know him as just a, freaking legend, to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
Was when you look back, because now we have the luxury of time, right? Now we've been away from the scene for a long
Sure.
time. We're older. We've been through other experiences. You said you guys didn't get along. Was it a coaching style issue, or and what I mean by that is how
It
he
was.
trains, or was it you being I'm going to say this the wrong way, probably, a 20-year-old? You were just a naive and thought you knew the world. What was it?
It was a combination of a lot of things. I'm a West Coast kid, born and raised by parents who always told me to speak my mind. And at that time in the world, in that part of the world, you were expected to be, yes, sir, no, ma'am, do what we say do, because I've never been that kid. I was always well, no, I need to know why. So it was never about X's and O's. I learned a lot of things from Curtis Fry on the track during that time. It was off the track issues that negatively impacted our relationship. And I think at that time in the world, we both played a huge role in that. I respect him so much because as an adult, when I got into this profession, he saw the work that I was doing at the level I was doing it, and he saw the value that I had in it. And, we had multiple conversations and came to a place of mutual respect as colleagues. And, that I'm sure that was difficult for him. It damn sure was difficult for me. But no, at that time, when I was in school, listen, I was a lot to handle. I was a lot. I had a mouth. I was not going to be, just put into a corner or told whatever. Like I had questions on everything. You want me to sign something? I need to know what I'm signing. I need to know why. You want me to, be at this place or at this place? I'm cool to be there, but I need to understand what's going on. And just me and Coach Fry during that time in the world, we saw the world very, very differently. He was always has been a family oriented, very religious man. Never been my thing. So we butted heads on a whole bunch of things that had nothing to do with track and field. I was always at practice trying to bust my tail, trying to become the best hurdler that I could be. And anything outside of that, I wasn't really trying to hear. And so
I like that you guys both had self-awareness about that, and now as colleagues in the same profession, that you guys can, I can only imagine it'd be hard for him. He knew you originally as a 20-year-old student athlete. You've always known him as the head coach of South Carolina. So he had to, again, it may be not fair, I'm conjecturing here. He had to be able to change his sight of you. Okay, this is no longer a 20-year-old, 21-year-old student athlete. This is now a 30-year-old professional man in this world, So he had to be able to make that change.
And I honestly give him a lot of credit for that. A lot of credit for that, because he didn't have to do that. And he could have chosen to see me as the kid that probably took a year off his life through stress. You know what I mean? He could have always chose to see me that way, but at a certain point, he decided to look at me for the work that I had done and the person that I had grown into. And like I said, just because we didn't get along for 2 years in Columbia, South Carolina, doesn't mean that I didn't learn. Doesn't mean that I didn't grow. From being in that program. I learned a lot from being in that program. A lot of good things, a lot of things that I carried forth about how to not to do things. And that program has grown. And it came to the point where I wanted to work in that program. I was a finalist for one of the assistant coach jobs that they had open a few years ago. So that's my alma mater. I'm a proud Gamecock, and I did a lot of good things there. And I definitely, the man that sits before you today would not be that person if I did not, spend the time that I did in Columbia, South Carolina. So
it's one of the bricks that helped.
I'll always be a Gamecock.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think South Carolina is where I did my level 1 for the first time. So I got to spend a little bit of time in Columbia. Definitely did not like the Gamecocks because I coached at Mississippi State. So they were always whooping our tail, to be real frank.
That's right. That's right. As the world should be. That's right.
Hey. Well, let's move on. you, when did coaching become part of you as a profession, not just what was done to you as an athlete?
Not too long after that time, actually. So I graduated in I'm spring 2004 class, and so like I said, I had run fast enough to qualify for the Olympic trials, and I immediately moved to Knoxville, Tennessee. Now I say moved because people should understand I was absolutely homeless. Like drove from South Carolina to Knoxville, Tennessee, and lived in my car for a while. Um,
Oh,
yeah, it was a lot. And so my whole thing was, the way I saw it, I was like, okay, I fulfilled my responsibility to my mother, who is a lifelong educator. Actually, my whole family are educators. My mom's a teacher, my aunt, my uncle, my sister, they're all teachers. And so, I got my degree, I did my part, got it all paid for. My mom didn't have to drop a dime for any of that. And I was like, now I'm gonna go become a professional track athlete. And my whole thing was, I knew in 2004 I didn't have any chance to make the Olympic team, but I was like, if I can make the final,
mm-hmm.
then maybe I get a contract, maybe I can get on the circuit. Because 2 years before that, in 2002, I'd finished 12th at USA's.
Mm.
I knew I had a shot to make that final. And so that was the goal. But then I re-injured my hamstring, I'd say about 2-3 weeks before the Olympic trials.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was bartending and sleeping in my car and stacking money. So because Sacramento, basically my home area, the Bay Area, was hosting the '04 trials. So I was saving up as much money as I could to get the plane ticket, to get the hotels and all this other stuff. And so when I re-injured my hamstring, I was like, you know what? Forget it. I'm gonna take this money that I've been stacking up and go finally go get an apartment and have
Yeah,
to
get out of the car.
reboot for 2005. Well, the crazy part was the Olympic trials go on, and Vince Anderson, who was coaching me at the time, calls me to tell me that he's accepted the job at Texas A&M. And obviously the right opportunity for him and his family. But the spot that I was in, I was like, man, I just got here. I just got this apartment. I can't move again. And so, at that time I was bartending, and the local track and field club, which was called Knoxville Track Club, offered me a position to coach the 9-year-old age group kids. And so that was my first official endeavor into coaching. It was the summer after I graduated college.
Was it more of, I want to go to coach at Knoxville Track Club, or was it more of like, okay, I need some more money and I
It was
can't?
absolutely babysitting for pocket change. That's exactly what it was. I mean, like I did all kind of stuff that summer. Like I said, bartending was my main source of income, but I worked at the UT camp that they would put on every year, and then I had the Knoxville Track Club gig, and it was just all hustle. It was just how much money can I hold on to so I can eat,
Dollar
something.
here, dollar there, dollar
Right.
there.
But the crazy part was that all of my 9-year-olds qualified for the national championships, and I took a very different approach to, I think, coaching kids of that age than anybody in that club was doing, and definitely that a lot of people kind of took a side eye to, because my thing was like, okay, well, I'm not just going to babysit your kids. Like, that's not what I'm here to do. Like, they're going to actually learn something, and we're going to like try to be productive. And I had to tell a bunch of parents to sit down, mind your business. They're out here for a reason, and that's why they excelled. And so I think, well, I know during that time that caught a lot of attention of the local people that were connected to the club. And so in the fall of 2004, they asked me to move up and take over the high school section, because that's where obviously the better athletes were. And so I did that. But shortly, I'd say by the spring of 2005, I realized that the way that club was functioning on a business end, and I didn't agree with it. I didn't feel that it was very ethical, and so I
And you're
decided,
not one to not question.
no, not at all.
I've learned that.
Yeah, no, it was, and I voiced my opinion, and there was some political stuff going on between, people's sons and daughters not being placed in the positions that they thought that they should be in. And my thing is like, hey, they're not fast enough, so I don't know what you want me to tell you. And so, me being like, what was I, 22, 23 at the time, I'm like, listen, I know how to run a track club. This isn't really that difficult. I'm just going to break off and do my own thing. And that was a big point of controversy because that had been the only track club in that area for maybe 20 something years.
Right. That's in a fairly,
And a very
I'm gonna say
successful.
famous, but yeah,
Oh,
very
no,
well
absolutely.
known.
In
Right.
that region, it was the biggest thing going. And
Absolutely.
so, and so you got this, 22, 23-year-old kid from California who
Right.
doesn't look like you guys, who doesn't talk like you guys, who doesn't know the political game in the area, and you just gonna break off and start your own thing. And I'm like, well, yeah, it only costs $50. I'm like, I got $50. And so I broke off, and my relationships with people connected to the University of Tennessee allowed me to continue to train my athletes at the University of Tennessee.
Good.
And the part that made everybody mad was the best athletes in the area, most of them at that age group in the high school realm, came with me because it was obvious that I was doing the best job coaching. And so immediately, we started setting all the area records. We started setting a bunch of state records. And then the next layer of drama that came with all of that was, the high school scene. And the high school scene and the club scene are at odds in most places. And I totally get that. Having worked with high school kids and having been a club coach, there are a lot of people that do that business wrong and handle that interaction wrong. And my attitude was always like, look, it's not about me. It's not about you guys. It's about the kids. My job is to get these kids in a position to run fast and hopefully go to college. So when I broke away, I looked at the club that we started more as an educational project. And it was. We only dealt with high school kids. Me and my co-founder, Tyangela Sanders, we were always concerned with the academic portions of it. I ran study halls. I did SAT, ACT preps.
As a track club, you did this.
Yes.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard this aspect.
I went to the high schools of my kids and did parent-teacher conferences in many respects.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was totally centered on, you can't run for me unless your goal is to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not interested in having a bunch of fast, uneducated kids just to make our club look good. Like, that's not a thing.
Did that come from your family background? You mentioned it sounded like everybody has a college degree. There are a lot of teachers in your family. Was that why it was so important?
I think subliminally it did. I always, people that really know me, I'm a product of a mixed race background. My father's African American, my mother's Italian, and my father died when I was 10 years old from an overdose of cocaine and heroin. My father was a drug addict, and the friends that I had my entire, I'd say, not it I always had to live in dual worlds, right? So my mother's a teacher, and she tried to make sure that we went to school in proper school districts. But I'm also a Black kid. And so I had two sets of friends. I had my white friends who were suburb kids, who we spent a lot of time around, who we did club sports and stuff with. And then I had my inner city friends. And all of my inner city friends, they were into bad issues and things that ultimately landed a lot of them dead, a lot of them in jail. And education saved my life.
Mm.
And so for me, it's always been a subliminal part of my consciousness. So when I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I'm working with the majority of these kids who come from broken homes, who come from the inner city, who live in what you would call the projects or the ghettos of Knoxville, Tennessee, and there are some, my thing was like, no, you have to take the school thing serious, and we need to get you into college. And we put 17 of our 18 kids into college.
It's
And
interesting.
I'm very proud of.
It's interesting. Before I had the just extreme pleasure of interviewing Brooks Johnson earlier this week, I would have asked you, Charles, was that your way of saving those kids?
Absolutely.
And but in turn, I think actually from what I learned from Brooks, because you said that this wasn't about you, it was about the kid, and I believe that 100%. That's
Yeah.
Brooks' whole thing. It's like, this ain't your athlete. You're there to help steward, but they're not. It's not your athlete, right? He I think from what he gave me knowledge wise, I think I would now ask you in a little bit differently. Instead of, it was that your way of saving them, maybe this was your way of helping them save themselves, because they ultimately have to
Yeah.
make the.
Oh, absolutely. I
Mhm.
mean, absolutely.
It's a subtle
No,
difference.
it's a huge
It's
nuance, and
huge.
it's
Yeah.
very, very, very important.
Hmm.
Like when I tell you we put 17 of 18 kids into college, not all of them were athletic superstars. Not all of
Hmm.
them were, full scholarship, Power Five kids. We had some of those,
Hmm.
but but that's what it was. It was all about, you need to understand that track and field can be a vehicle to whatever life you're going to ultimately do. And of
Hmm.
course, the big star of that group that everybody remembers is Jacqueline Coward. Jackie was a terrible student when I first started working with her. I mean, a really, not because not because she couldn't do the work. She didn't understand the value in it. And there were many times
That's
where
important.
I was like, look, get one more bad grade. I promise you, you're not running. We're not going to nationals. We're not getting on the plane. We're not traveling to the meets. Like, it was that kind of push and pull. And ultimately, she ended up graduating with a 3-point plus GPA. The girl spoke German. Like, Jackie,
Really? Holy
Jackie, Jackie
cow.
Power today can speak German because she found a foreign language that she thought was interesting. And ultimately, when she turns professional in track and field years later, and she's in Europe, she could speak to the populace because of something that she learned.
That's cool.
Like,
Yeah.
it was all about the educational aspect of it for me. And yeah,
Okay.
we ran really fast, and we
Mhm.
rewrote the Tennessee record books, and we did all that stuff.
And I think what's important for her story as well is, she was, I don't know if she was the number one hurdler in the country coming out of high school, but certainly she was top five. I don't remember. I mean, she was.
Jackie Coward. Here's an interesting stat about Jackie Coward. Jackie Coward is the only hurdler in the history of the U.S. to graduate high school top 10 in every discipline. Top 10 all time in every discipline.
Oh.
Jackie finished when her high school career was over. Records have now been purged, but when her high school career was over, she was, I'm hoping I'm gonna get all this right. She was number 2 all time in the 55 hurdles. She had reset the national record in the 60 hurdles twice. The old record was 8:33. She took it to 8:16. Okay. She was top 10 in the 100 hurdles. She was top 10 in the 300 hurdles. She was top 10 in the 400 hurdles. She's the only person to pull that off. She made the all-decade All-American team on the same list as Allison Felix and Sonia Richards and all of these people. Jackie was a phenomenal, phenomenal talent. She didn't set the outdoor national record. Vashti Thomas did that in her era.
Hmm.
Someone else who I got to work
I
with.
was about to say, we're going to get to her. Exactly.
Right. But no, Jack was a man, listen, and single parent kid, super religious background, just a really sweet kid from Knoxville, Tennessee, who by pure accident we got to work together.
Hmm.
And like, Jackie is the most famous of my high school kids, but she's not the best work that I did at that time. The best work that I did at that time was taking a random girl from Knoxville named Tierra, who used to run 27.8 in the 200, and she ran 24.9. Like, that was hard to do. Like,
Right.
Jack was a phenomenal talent. She just needed some direction and some focus and learning how to, be disciplined about herself. But there was
What,
a bunch
what
of people like that.
what I like about Jacqueline's story, and completely from the outside, I don't think I've even actually even met her, unfortunately, is that she could have gone to any school. Earlier, you'd mentioned about kids that went to go to Power Five. That's one of our,
Yep.
I hear that everybody, right? Oh well, who's going to Power Five? What Power Fives, et cetera, et cetera. She actually made the choice to go to Central Florida, where the great Carol Smith Gilbert was at.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about that whole scene, like, I actually had nothing to do with that part of it. So
Oh, okay.
if you look at the timeline of Carol's career, and let me be clear, Carol might be the best recruiter in the game. Carol has a phenomenal skill set. Just, she understands people. She knows how to talk to people. Carol was working at the University of Tennessee. Obviously, people remember Tennessee's program used to be split gender. And so Carol was the sprint coach at University of Tennessee while I was training Jackie in Knoxville. So Carol knew who Jackie was, Jackie knew who Carol was, and, you know, they got to see each other, you know, often. But when I left, like when I decided to leave Knoxville, my roommate had screwed up the rent and I ended up homeless again. And one of the families of the kids that I was training was gracious enough to let me live in their house for 6 months. And like, I was broke because I had 3 other jobs. I was working as a counselor, a youth counselor at one of the local middle schools. I was doing UPS at night, which is the most awful thing ever.
Oh, that's terrible.
And, you know, just finding and still kind of trying to do the bartending thing. And I was doing all of that, not to pay my bills, but to fund the track club. Because like I said, Jackie couldn't afford spikes. Lily couldn't afford spikes. These kids couldn't afford plane tickets when they were applicable. They couldn't afford hotel nights. Like, a lot of that I funded myself. And so I was running myself crazy trying to get money so I could keep this club going. But we didn't have sponsorship deals. Hell, one year the kids had to stand on the street with signs to raise money, you know, come donate to the bucket to help raise money to get us to Baltimore, Maryland for the JOs. Like, it was that level of stuff. So all my income was to pay my bills, eat, and pay for these kids, you know, things that they had going on. And so when in 2007, the promise that I had made to the kids was, my original kids, which Jackie was an original kid, but I got her when she was a baby, when she was a freshman. I was like, I promise you guys, I'm going to stay here to see all of you into college. I can't promise much past that. And new kids, as you come in, you're not a part of the original clique.
Different promise.
Right? And so Jackie was the youngest and the last of that group. There were other people in her class, but she had run so well that going into her senior year, she was already the #1 recruit in the country. And her grades were at a point where I knew she wasn't going to be able to fall back into any kind of negative place. So I got an offer. To take a job at Long Beach State. And that's what was supposed to happen. And so I did a bunch of phone interviews, and, you know, coach told me, hey man, you're going to be the guy, come on out. And, you know, for me, I'm like, I'm going home. Like, yes, my mother was living in Los Angeles at the time. This is too easy. You know, I can't say no. And so I had to gather the kids together and, you know, tell them like, hey guys, listen, you know my living situation, you know what it's been. Like, I have to go.
No brainer.
And I honestly don't even remember parts of that conversation because it was so raw and emotional. I had a whole breakdown. It was awful. And so I say all that to say that next fall, when Jackie was going through her visits, I actually wasn't a part of that. We had already set up her 5 official visits, and UCF was not a part of that calculus. They weren't in the group. She took a trip to Illinois to see Tanja Buford-Bailey. She took a trip to Texas A&M to see Vince Anderson. She was supposed to go visit Jeanette Bolden at UCLA. I think Bev Kearney at Texas at the time. And I think Florida was the last one on the list. And somehow, some way, she ended up canceling the UCLA visit and taking a UCF visit. And Carol nailed her. Carol got her. And so, like, I literally did not know. Like, she called me and was like, hey, I'm going to UCF. I was like, oh, okay. Like, didn't know that was going on. Yeah. But the crazy part was I didn't get the job at Long Beach State. I went out there. I came on campus. I met the admins. I took the tour, did the whole thing, and then got called back and was told that they had to end up firing the distance coach. And the person that they were going to hire for the distance position was a young coach, and they didn't want to hire 2 young coaches. So sorry, kid, figure it out. And
Ouch.
I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I
Ouch.
just relocated my entire life. I left my kids. Like, I was not happy. I was not happy about it at all. And I was lucky enough that Jeanette Bolden helped me get a position at the UCLA campus on the academic side, basically as a mentor, helper for the women's track team on the academic front.
Oh,
I
cool.
meet with the student athletes, like, hey, what's going on with your classes, blah, blah, blah. And in the middle of that, Sean Jackson called me that summer, Louisiana Tech University. And he literally says to me, he's like, listen, man, I don't know you. We've never met, but everybody in the Southeast tells me you're the person I need to hire.
And that's
So,
interesting.
No, it was nuts.
You know, that's an important lesson because, you know, I'm going to say a curse word here, letsrun.com. I pay attention to one portion of letsrun.com. Every year there's a coach's.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know I saw, you
get it
can't see
all wrong.
You can't see this, but the eye roll that he just gave, and rightfully so. Although I always tell people, you'd be surprised who's actually on there, because some of that stuff is exactly true. But you're right; you got to feed through the.
Oh yeah, listen. My biggest problem with the Let's Run blog, because I think the website Let's Run is fantastic, but the
Two
blog,
different things. The message
blog
board and right, yeah.
And my problem with the blog is it's all anonymous. Like, no one has the guts
Agreed.
to put the name next to whatever it is they're talking about.
Agreed.
But no, the coaches moving thing every year, hilarious to read. But yeah,
the lesson. Hold on, the lesson you gave there. This is important for people to hear. The reason I brought up that message board and that thread is, you know, every other thread is, it's all about who you know. That job's already, if it's posted, they already know who they're hiring. Here's a case, because I thought you were going to say you and Sean were friends in some fashion. I know you are now, and what a great guy he is. I love that guy to death. He did not know you. He reached out to you because of your reputation of doing the right thing in the stops that you were at beforehand. That's a really important distinction.
Exactly. I did not apply. I did not apply for that job. Honestly, I'd never heard of Louisiana Tech University. I did not know the school existed. And no, he called me.
That's an important lesson.
He called me. He's like, we got this position open. You know, you be running the hurdle crew and helping me with the sprints. And I said, listen, send me the contract first.
yeah. This ain't going twice. That's right.
Right. But like, you know, I put my stuff.
Also is an important lesson.
Right. I put my stuff back in the car and drove to Ruston, Louisiana, which I had never heard of. 2 miles down the block from Grambling. I heard of Grambling, never heard of Louisiana Tech. And so I was there for from 2007 to 2010 under the leadership of Gary Stanley. Gary Stanley is the head coach. He's always been. And Gary's a great guy. But Gary's a distance guy, and he was singularly focused on that. Like, Gary gave Sean, who was the associate head coach, the space, the freedom, and the autonomy to run that part of the program the way he wanted. So I dealt directly with Sean on most days. Me and Sean were able to, you know, continue to build and evolve the sprint and hurdle program. So Sean handled all the jumps, I handled all the hurdles, and we worked together with the sprinters. And in my time there, you know, that was crazy to me, because it was when you're in the club world and you have the space and opportunity to run your team with absolute authority any way you want. You make the rules, you make the calls, I don't have to answer to anybody. And now I'm in D1 athletics, and I got all these people above my head, and I'm like, okay, I need to learn how to be an assistant. I'd never been an assistant.
Yeah, this is your first college job. Let's not forget that. Yeah.
No, my first college job, man. Right. Listen, I got that job wrong on day one. Day one, Sean basically split the team, the sprint crew, in half, and wanted me to take the kids through a warm-up routine.
Right.
And I'll never forget, there was a young lady who was just refused to do anything right. And in my brain, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I know the athlete that I was. I forgot, I was a very highly talented person with a lot of skills, that a lot of things came very easy to me. And at the high school level, I took a bunch of developmental kids and spent a lot of time teaching them how to do things right. But I thought, well, hey, you're all in college, so you should be good at this. And so this girl was just flopping around, and she had the worst attitude ever. And so I got instantly frustrated by her attitude. And I'm like, and her name was Bam. And I was like, listen, that's what they called her. And I was like, listen, you can either do this right or you can, get the hell up out of practice. She's like, you can't kick me out of practice. I was
Day
like,
one.
Day one. I was like, I just did kick you out of practice.
Foot down.
Right? Because that's how I was. That's how my club functioned. Like everybody knew, like, you gonna handle your business right or you can go. And I kicked her out. And of course, what did she do? She walked straight across the track to Coach Jackson and gave her version of what happened. And he came back. He was like, bro, you can't just kick kids out of practice. I was like, what do you mean I can't kick her out? She was boom, 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 boom. And it was like, I had to, like, okay, wait a minute. Take a breath. I need to understand how this game is going to work here. And it was a very humbling moment for me, but I had to learn how to be an assistant.
Take her attitude aside, because I don't want to say no excuses for that, but attitude, right? I guarantee, former coach myself, everybody else listening to their first day of college practice, I think that is the universal thought. Oh, they're in college. They're at a level, you don't have to teach this and this and this. And then, 10 years later, you start going, oh man, all I do is teach the basics.
Every day. But
I love that.
It was really, my time at Louisiana Tech was, it served me extremely, extremely well. I learned a lot from Gary. I learned a lot from Sean. And just about how to navigate the business side of it. Because club track is, youth mentorship. It is servant leadership. It is, pushing young people. But it has nothing to do with business. It has nothing to do with business. And professional, college athletics is a professional industry. It's a business. And I had to learn that really, really quick, or I wouldn't have survived that time. And so in my 3 years there, we were wildly successful. The women, we swept every championship. We went 6 for 6, 3 indoor.
Back then?
We were in the WAC back then, the Western Athletic Conference, which obviously made absolutely no sense that Louisiana Tech would be in the WAC, but that's where they were. And we swept everything. My kids set a bunch of school records at that time. We put a lot of kids into nationals, men and women, and I learned a lot from those people. And that's how I ended up with the Art U opportunity.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's interesting that you're in the Western Athletic Conference, because now that you're on the closer to east side, it's time for you to go back to the west. So yes. You go back to the Bay Area with this next transition, correct?
That's true. Another random accident, really. People need to understand, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. My grandparents on my mother's side had an apartment in the marina my entire life. Like, I've been in San Francisco. Never heard of Academy of Art University. Never seen Academy of Art University, even though the school is sprawled throughout the city. They got 42 buildings. It's not a campus.
Oh, wow.
It's absolutely not a campus. There are 42 buildings stretching from the financial district to Soma to the Fisherman's Wharf. Like, they just have properties all around the city. And depending on what major you're in, your classes are going to be in these different buildings. They got dorms, they got all of that, but there is no campus. The city is the campus.
And this is an interesting time for you, this portion of your career. We got a little taste of it when we had Mont Johnson on the podcast. It seems like months ago. With coronavirus, I don't know what day it is anymore. It could have been last week for all I know. I have no idea anymore.
Right.
So you kind of set the groundwork on what the school is, because you're right. Everybody, I shouldn't say everybody. Actually, more people now have heard of Art U because of you in the track world. But before that, you're right. No one knew what this school was. So, spoiler alert, you win national titles there, which is amazing, because how many coaches actually coach national championship teams? That's a rarefied air. But take us back. Was this a new program? Was it a new had it been around and you just took over? Talk to us about the actual
Yeah.
program.
So okay, so the Art U story is a little bit complicated. First
Okay.
and foremost, like I said, total accident that I ended up there in the first place. It was summertime, it was off season. I was in Phoenix, Arizona, visiting a friend of mine, just hanging out, and I got a text that there was this head coach position open in the Bay Area, and it was Division II. And I'm like, well, I never, considered Division II, but it's in the
Let me
Bay.
ask you, I understand Division II, and obviously the Bay is going to be a draw because of family. Was the idea that it was a head coaching job attractive to you? Was that something you were pursuing this early? It's still early in your career here.
It's absolutely not something I was pursuing.
Okay.
During my time at Louisiana Tech, I had opportunities to interview for different positions throughout the country in Division I, and a lot of them I didn't even choose to go interview for because I really wasn't trying to leave La Tech. I knew that I had a good situation. I knew that the work that we were able to do down there with the way Gary let us cut up the scholarships and things, like I knew we had a good situation. We were winning. We were setting records. We were putting kids into nationals. One of my young ladies won the Honda Spirit Award and was nationally recognized. Like
Wow.
Antoinette Cobb, fantastic kid. Like that, easily the best kid, just human being I've ever coached.
Life is good in Ruston,
Yeah,
Louisiana.
I was fine. I mean, Ruston, yeah, whatever. But my professional life was definitely good at
Right.
Louisiana Tech, and I was happy there. So the draw for me was Bay Area, and because it's a brand new program, in a sense, I get to make it in the image that I wanted.
Oh yeah.
And so I had never considered a head coaching job before that. And I knew from a technical aspect, I probably wasn't ready. Like I knew I wasn't, like all the background that goes into, like I knew what Gary did every day, and I'm like, yeah, nah, probably not my scene, right? But it was available and it was at home. So I sent in a resume directly to the AD, and he called me almost immediately. And he's like, listen, I would love to talk to you. Your resume looks fantastic. And he's like, we can't really, bring people out for interviews. I was like, well, listen, man, I'm in Phoenix, so I'll be there tomorrow.
He couldn't bring him in because of budget,
financial, whatever.
Yeah,
They
okay,
weren't bringing people in for face-to-face interviews.
right.
And I was like, I'm in Phoenix. I'll drive up there. It's not a problem. He was like, you do that? I was like, well, it's my home anyway. So yeah, I can go see my mom and I can come see y'all. It's fine. And so I drive up to the Bay, and I was there for 7 hours. And like, what people need to understand, Art U has existed since the 20s.
Wow.
It never had an athletic department. Never. Dr. Elisa Stevens wanted to create, more profile for the school. It's a for-profit private school. She wanted to create more attention to the school. An easy way to garner attention and increase enrollment, have athletics. So they invent the athletic program out of thin air. They hired, for their first AD was the person who hired me, Dr. Jamie Williams. Dr. Williams is a phenomenal human being. He's a former NFL football player for the Oilers and for the San Francisco 49ers, tight end. And from what I understand, he was pretty good. I think he made an all-star team or two.
He's an NFL, man. You're automatically, I don't care what, you good.
but his true passion is the arts. In his post life, he was a writer. He was one of the coordinators of the movie Any Given Sunday. He worked on the production crew. He's actually in the movie.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, he helped Oliver Stone with the whole project. And so from that whole thing, blending the world of art and athletics, he was the perfect person to lead this direction of this new thing. But he never worked in athletic administration before, like never. And so you have a university trying to invent an athletic department out of thin air, and no one that works in the athletic department has done this before.
Right.
So you can imagine the random like spectacle that this was.
Yeah.
And so 2 years before I arrived is when they snapped their fingers and said, we're going to do this thing.
Mm.
So the NCAA has hoops that you have to jump through in order to be considered a legitimate entity. And so they were in the middle of going through their process of becoming an NCAA viable program when I was hired.
Mm.
And when I say that a lot of people did not know what they were doing, here's a perfect example. On my interview, I was shown the roster, I was shown the scholarship count, and they were asking about the problem that they had the previous year where they got dinged by the NCAA because their track season didn't count. And I said, well, it obviously didn't count because you don't have 14 people on the roster. So if you don't have 14 people on the roster, when you go to the meets don't count. And certain people in the room didn't know that. And I'm like, guys,
Wow.
like, no. There's a whole bunch of things here that
Wow.
you guys are not doing, properly. So to me, I saw this as like, okay, I may not be ready to be a head coach, but these people don't know that anyway. So I can do,
I can
I
at
can
least get
figure
them
it
up
out.
to here. Yeah.
Like I can figure it out. And the one thing that I will always respect Dr. Williams for is he told me during that, hour upon hour conversation, he was like, if you come in here, I expect you to be able to do this thing the way you need it done. And I was like, Dr. Williams, if y'all stay out of my way and support me, I will deliver you a national championship. I told that man in
How
his
did you
office.
say, oh, come on now?
No, because listen, I understood the landscape of Division II. I understood who the power players were. I understood how they were scoring points. And these are
Big
all
time power players, by the
right.
way.
And I understood, these are things that I was talking to him about in the interview. And I said, you guys are fully funding this program at Division II. A lot of people aren't doing that.
Right.
I was like, I have the Bay Area on my side.
Right.
I know all the people out here. And the school itself was a huge selling point because the school offered an education that most people never considered. Art-based education. When I went to UCLA, I wanted to major in film and television. They told me no. They said athletes don't major in film and television. Pick something else. And at 18, I didn't know that I got screwed in that deal, but that was where my passion was. So I knew that there were kids just like me,
That's
super
interesting.
talented, who wanted to study fashion for a major,
Yeah.
who wanted to study journalism, who wanted to study communications, who wanted to study painting. Like I know those people exist because I was one of those people. And so I was like, if you guys back me and let me run this the way I want to run it, I will win you a national championship at this school. And they gave me the job. In our first recruiting class, I signed the Texas State champion in the 100 meters, Jalen Hicks. How do we sign Jalen Hicks? Jalen Hicks wanted to draw pictures for Pixar.
See, that's funny that you said that. That was going to be my exact question. So how did you sign him? And not only him, I mean, there's a list here of kids.
Oh, absolutely. Jalen Hicks was a Texas State 5A champion, ran 10-1 at the state meet, but it was windy, was a 10-3 sprinter, phenomenal kid, and his dream was to work for Pixar. We were the only school that was going to get him, okay? When he came out, when he took the recruiting trip and literally understood that our graduates already had built-in relationships with Pixar,
Done.
it was done. It was a wrap. It was one of the easiest recruiting jobs I've ever had. We signed the California State champion in the 400, Shaquille Howard. We signed the California State champion in the triple jump, Johnny Carter. We signed so many kids. And the beauty of Division II was, in Johnny Carter's case, Johnny Carter should have been in Power 5 somewhere. He was that level of jumper. But Johnny had some academic issues. And so, much like my work in Knoxville, Tennessee, I got to help kids from a specific background who needed specific help and guidance, and Division I wasn't going to let them play. So
Right.
I had a perfect opportunity to not just bring kids in that other people couldn't touch, but give them a path to an education that they couldn't see. Johnny wasn't a bad student. He didn't formal education didn't rock with him. Like he's bored sitting in math class. He's bored sitting in science class. The way he was, connected with the things that we had going on at this school. Johnny never really got bad grades at RU. He was never ineligible at RU. Like he was a good student.
So,
And so
First of all, shout out to Art U for adding sports and knowing that that was a way to grow their institution. Unfortunately, every week right now, it seems like we're getting, from Brown University, Central Michigan's, et cetera, people are cutting opportunities, which is
Absolutely.
just the absolute backwards thinking that I've ever seen. So shout out to Art U for adding sports. I love hearing that. Follow up to this unique academic culture at RU. This niche is what you're really
It was
describing here,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely niche.
So, and again, law tech and Alabama State, and now at Cal-Berkeley. So you understand the you're going to have kids who are going to have issues with grades in college, whether it's studying, test preparation, etc. It was it different at RU on the academic side as far as like study halls and
There was nothing. There was nothing similar
Hmm.
in any sense to the way academics are handled at RU to any other place I've ever seen.
Okay.
And like, so
Also,
did we as a staff have study hall? Well, yeah, but if you got one kid who's literally majoring in sculpture, and you have another kid who's majoring in mass communication, and you have another kid who's majoring in digital media, I can't put them in a room and say, "Hey guys, do your homework." That
right?
is
Yeah.
not a thing. I assure you, we tried it. We tried it for 2 weeks. It was a massive fail. Done. Like, absolutely not. And
Right.
so we had to get really, really creative with the way that we pushed our kids academically and held
Hmm.
them accountable for the stuff that they had to do. But the university itself has a lot of a lot of those things built into it as well.
Hmm.
And so, our kids, like I said, it was a big learning curve. It was a lot of the university itself. I mean, there were people working at that school that were absolutely appalled at the fact that we were bringing in athletes to this pure culture of art. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of those people don't have any, care for sports. Some of
Yeah, I
them
think
love
that's a
them.
pretty standard. I don't want to
Yeah,
say
it
it's
is.
very
It is standard.
common
It
in
is very
academic
standard. It
institutions.
is standard across academia, period. But you have to understand, like, the art use premise for being a professor there is that you had to have been a professional in that field.
Mm.
So you're talking about people who worked in Hollywood as producers. They don't care that you have a basketball team. Like, the level of passion about what they do there academically is very unique to anything I've ever seen. And so it was a constant learning curve and hurdles to clear and these things. And here we are, trying to not just exist as a program. I'm trying to kick in the door and take my seat at the table. And
Right.
so,
Yeah, you did
yeah,
promise a national title.
no, right. I promised it to Dr. Williams on my interview, but here's where it got really interesting because so I went there in the fall of 2010. We weren't scheduled to become NCAA eligible until 2012.
Okay.
And the school made a decision to push that one more year until the 12-13 season. So I did an interview. I did an interview with Miles Split
Mhm.
in, I think, in Tennessee, I believe it was, in 2011-12, in the fall of 11, going into 12. And I said, because at that point I knew the roster that we had, and I said in that interview, in print, I said, the first year that we're eligible for the NCAA championship, our women's team is going to win nationals. And you can imagine the
Yeah, what are you
firestorm of,
doing? Yeah.
I knew what we had. I knew what we had. I knew who was on our roster. I knew the kids we had coming in. And at that point, we had already had Vashti Thomas transfer from Texas A&M. And a lot of people didn't know that.
Mm.
I knew what we had. There was
So
there was no way.
let's talk about that because you're talking about kids were coming to your team and weren't going to be eligible to run until for track 2013. How did you convince kids to come and really redshirt ice? It sounds like.
Yeah, basically. The school. So Vashti Thomas is a perfect example of that. Vashti Thomas ran 13 flat at the California State meet her senior year. Had the national high school record. I think she still has officially the technical high school record. I think she still has it. And she was a 20-foot long jumper. And she was a 41-foot triple jumper. Like, Vashti's a phenomenal athlete.
Right.
She goes to Texas A&M, obviously full scholarship, working with Vince Anderson, Jim Van Eynigen, under Pat Henry, all of that. While she was on that team, Texas A&M won national titles, and she contributed to those teams.
Right.
But she was dramatically unhappy as a student, not because A&M's a bad school, because Vashti is a legitimate you know what Vashti's dream job was? She wanted to be a tattoo artist. Now,
Really?
a kid that wants to be a tattoo artist does not want to go to traditional college and sit in classrooms.
And what do you go to traditional college and study? I don't want my
Right.
tattoo artist to be an English major.
Exactly. She was trying to study some form of what they considered to be art there.
Art. Mm-hmm.
And it just was not remotely a fit. And she was doing bad in school and obviously struggling to maintain her eligibility. It was always a semester by semester juggle of whether she's going to be in or out. And so Vince Anderson calls me and he was like, Chuck, listen, we have no problems with Vashti, but she's really not happy here. And, you know, obviously we're not interested in releasing her and having to compete against her. You know what I mean? But, you know, she would, you know, I think she'd be a perfect fit for what you guys have going on there. And I was like, dude, I know who Vashti is. She can absolutely come. What do I need to do?
Right.
And so they gave her release. I called, and the funny thing is, because I had coached Jackie and used to bring Jackie out to Arcadia Invitational back when we were all in high school, me and Vashti knew each other, like they were rivals. And so she knew who I was as coach. She knew the people that I had worked with. And I promise you, the very first conversation I had with Vashti, I was like, Vash, this is Coach Ryan from Art U. She's like, I'm coming. What do we need to do?
How many coaches are jealous right now? They're like, dude, no recruit does that. Come on.
and people forget Vashti's from the Bay. So for her, she got to come home and study art. Yeah, whatever. She wasn't even worried about the track stuff. And, you know, the work that we were able to do when Vashti came in, her long jump PR was 621 meters. Her hurdle PR was still 13 flat from high school. I took her to 1260. I took her to 2210 and a half, aka 697. She jumped 43 in the triple jump for kicks. Like we were just screwing around with it.
Right.
She never run under 24 seconds in the 200. She ran 22.7 for us. Like, you know, combine that with all the other young ladies that we had on the team. I mean, when we won nationals in 2013, our first eligible season in indoor, we sent 8 girls to the meet. All 8 of them scored. We kicked the door in. We blew people out. And
how much of that improvement from someone like Vashti, and obviously most of your other kids probably improved as well. How much of that for like a Vashti? Is it Vashti or Vashti? I want to make sure I'm.
She would say Vashti.
Vashti. How much of that? Because you know she came from pretty high level coaches. You know, Jimmy V
Yes.
is awesome, Vince is awesome, Pat's awesome, things like that. Was it? And you're awesome too. This is not a. I'm not trying to rank coaches here, Charles.
No.
How much of that was because you're talking about that struggle she was having academically? How much it was that stress level was gone, and she could now put more attention towards running faster and jumping farther?
I think that was a huge part of it.
Mm.
Listen, when kids are making the choice to where they want to go to school, a lot of kids make the mistake of choosing the brand name, and because it's sexy, and I get it. And you know, you want to go to a ready-made program that's have a lot of success, but so much of kids' developmental success is how they feel, or do they have the relationship with the coaches that they thought that they were going to have? Are they comfortable? Are they happy? Vashti was unhappy as a student.
Mm.
She loved Vince. She loved Jim. She loved her teammates, but she was unhappy as a student, and it was a constant stress of, I hate these classes, but I have to do them, and I'm not doing well, but I have to do it. And you know what I mean? It was like that. And the other part of it for her specifically when she was at A&M was, I think she thought it was going to be more of a, I'm going to hurdle and jump on the side. And for A&M and their needs in the program at the time, they needed her to jump primarily and hurdle on the side.
Oh.
So her training and the people that she got to spend most of her time with weren't really how she thought it was ultimately going to be.
Mm-hmm.
For me, because of the way the structure was, I had total control over all of it. So it was never an issue of her having to go back and forth between coaches. It was just, hey, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it in tandem, and we're going to figure this out. But that was a lot of our kids were were transfers or developmental kids. I mean, Julian Purvis came to us as a grad student. She graduated from University of Michigan, was a phenomenal hurdler in high school, was a decent hurdler in college, but she never broke through. She broke through with us. And you know, she was, again, coming home. She's in grad school. She's a little bit more mature. She learned some lessons. But like, I mean, we put, in 2013, we put half of the field on the track for the women's hurdles. We had 4 of the 8 finalists, indoor and outdoor.
Holy
Like,
crap.
we dominated that space, and ultimately that was the key to us dominating the meet. And it's, the history of it is this: no school in any sport has ever won a national championship in their first year of existence. We won.
Yeah, right. It's
2.
impossible.
We won 2.
Wow.
Indoor and outdoor our first year. And that's the legacy of what that place can accomplish if you put the pieces in place, if you're running it the way that it can be run, if you see the vision of it. And that place was all about vision. When we got the girls their rings, on the ring it said vision to reality. Like that, it's a visionary place, and it was a great time in my life. And you know, I loved that place. I will always love that place.
I think, you know, unfortunately, we don't reach many high school athletes with this podcast, but man, what an important topic you just talked about, of the overall, the real holistic approach of the athlete and the stress levels that come with it. Meaning that if you are majoring in something, or the academics aren't at your level, up or down, that is going to affect what happens on the track. I have to imagine that probably affects what happens in relationships with family and boyfriend, girlfriend, etc. Those things, that the holistic side of picking a college, it is not just about a specific coach, a specific brand of school, a specific major. It is there's a whole amalgamation of a lot of stressors to consider.
The people that do it right, the people that do it the best, and the kids that thrive the most are a holistic fit for the program. You know, and every program has its nuances. Every program has their niche. But it has to be more than how fast can you run. You know, like I said, for me, education saved my life. The people that we developed when I was a head coach at Art U, if I know all their stories, I know who they were when they arrived, I know who they are today. Vashti Thomas is a police officer in San Francisco.
Oh, that's awesome.
That doesn't happen if not for the life experiences that she undertook at that time. Johnny Carter is a father. You have to know Johnny Carter. That is insane to me. I can't. Johnny Carter knows the knucklehead that he was when he came to school.
Reminds me of someone else we talked about a little bit.
Absolutely. Like, you know, these people, you know, Breonna Stewart got her degree in fashion, a kid that a lot of people incorrectly judged as, you know, like she was somehow dumb or something. That girl isn't dumb. That girl is incredibly smart. But she had to find something she was passionate about to do proper work in schooling. She cares about fashion. She wants to work in that world, and she's doing that now and thriving in it. Like, there were so many kids like that if they would have went to traditional school, they might have flunked out. And you know, these are good kids, and these are kids that need those kind of opportunities. So
yeah, so important.
You know, it was a great time in my life, and that program will always be special to me.
I love how you said too about, you know, it's not about just the time in that the kid runs, that, you know, they're more than that identity, is how I would say that, you know.
Yes.
But in track, it's so easy because, you know, one of the great things about track, we always say it's such a pure sport, right? That the stopwatch is the same in Alabama high school as it is in Washington College. You know, we can compare people because the tape measure is the same. The stopwatch is the same. Where football, you don't know, you know, unless you play, and then it's a team sport. You can't compare. But the kids are not just that stat. They are more than that stat.
Absolutely. And so much of our sport is mental. You know, going into that 2013 season, like I said, I knew what we had. And we had our first team meeting at the beginning of the year. We did the whole team, men and women, together. And then I dismissed the men, and I told them, you know, go on with their business for the day. And I said, ladies, we're going to win the national championship this year. And if that scares you, you need to get up and walk out. And they kind of looked at me like I'm nuts. I'm like, no, understand this. This is happening. What we need to identify this fall is what role you're going to play in that puzzle, because this is going to happen. And I only want people who are ready to push in and take that fight, because I'm not running from it. I said it in print 2 years ago.
Yeah, well, you.
And so it was, once they understood what was possible, once they understood the mission, once they understood each of their roles in that, it was easy. I don't want to say it was easy to pull off, because it definitely wasn't.
Right.
But the focus that they had, the singular focus, they understood. Everybody knew what role they had to play. Everybody knew that what their job was, and on every given day, everybody had a purpose, and they knew what it was. And I was like, you may win I told them, we may win 3 national championships in your time, but what you can do this year on this team specifically is going to be history. And you can't be scared of that. We had a freshman on that team named Kiana Moody from Lincoln, Nebraska. And, as a freshman, she's coming in, she's doing the training, and it looks like she ain't gonna qualify for nationals. So I'm like, okay, Kiki, we're gonna probably redshirt you. She's like, no, I'm not missing this. I'm going to run. What can I do? I was like, well, maybe you can take a relay spot. And she, sure enough, knocked 2 girls out the box and took a relay spot because she wanted to be a part of it. She didn't want a red shirt. She didn't want to sit out. And like it was that kind of scene there, and it was awesome. It was awesome.
I like your analogy of a puzzle. So I get this picture that, when a puzzle is complete, it's a picture. So you had already spoken the picture, literally spoken the picture of the national title, and podcast and print and interviews and to your athletic director. But unfortunately, when we get that puzzle, when we buy it from the store, right, it's all jumbled up. So you have all these pieces, and you have the athletes, you have the coaches, etc. One of those pieces of a puzzle for anybody running a program is also their facilities. My understanding is you didn't have facilities.
Listen, no, we did not. Absolutely did not have facilities. They really still don't have facilities. So year one, like, okay, RU has no facilities. There's no athletic venue.
No track, no fields.
None. So from a track and field perspective, year one, and if you've ever understood the Bay Area, you'll get how ridiculous this was. Year one, what we had to do, what we've always done, is rent space from other places. So year one, for whatever reason, we were renting track space from Merritt College, which is in Oakland, at the top of the hill of East Oakland.
So California. Tell me about that.
Okay? So San Francisco and Oakland are on opposite sides of the bridge.
Oh,
so
okay.
So understand this. We would, every day, the kids would load up because RU has their own private bus system. We would load up the shuttle bus, get on the freeway in Bay Area traffic, cross the bridge. Now you're in West Oakland. Drive all the way up to the hills of Oakland, unload the bus, have track practice, and drive all the way back.
How long was this ride?
In no traffic, zero traffic.
You're so Californian.
Right. Zero traffic. The ride is about 35 minutes. In traffic, there were days it took an hour and a half.
Oh, every day.
Every day.
And then back.
Over, do the practice, and back. So I had to try to structure practice times where we could leave the city before traffic hit. And when you're trying to come back into the city during rush hour, no one's trying to come in, everyone's trying to come out. So
right.
we were trying to coordinate that dance, and that was always interesting. So after year one, I'm like, hey, listen, that's horrible. We cannot do that. I was like, I don't care what we do, we can't do that anymore. And so I had relationships with Doug Oyang, who was the coach at San Francisco City College at the time. And I'm like, listen, we need to practice there. And so it cost us some more money, but we got access at San Francisco City. And that was a much easier drive, but still a drive. But the beauty of that was the subway, the Bay Area Rapid Transit, has a station 2 blocks away from that track. So imagine, it's not like you can just leave your dorm and go to the track like everybody else. You either caught your shuttle bus or you had to get on the subway to come to the JUCO to get your practices in. And that was, you know, a hilarious spectacle in itself. Weight room. My first year in the weight
Oh
room,
yeah.
first year in the weight room. Now, mind you, again, it was an athletic department built out of nothing. So you can
Right.
imagine the level of recruits that they originally had. Not really awesome athletes. I inherited a girl on the roster who was on a full scholarship, whose PR in the 100 meters was 13-1. Okay, that's a thing that happened. The previous
It's a
coach.
thing.
Okay, so these are like we had to get
Ouch.
them off the roster. So the original weight room was a theater that the school owned. And, you know, they're like, well, we need a big space to lift weights. We'll put it in the theater. Well, it's San Francisco. So the theater is on a street called Sutter, right?
Yep.
And it's literally a theater. Like people used to do performances on it. And so it's a wood floor, but it's San Francisco. So under the wood floor, like there's a whole basement and stuff, right? That surface is not made for weightlifting.
Right.
And so prior to my arrival, when people would go into the weight room and, you know, play around, nobody cared.
Right.
But
No playing around.
I got the kids in there and like they're doing cleans, they're doing snatches, they're tossing weight on the floor. We cracked the damn floor. We cracked the floor and had to shut the theater down because my track girls and guys broke the floor. Like it was madness.
Oh man.
And so yeah, like that's like it was that kind of thing. We moved offices every 6 months. I had five offices in my time there. They started off really, really awful and got better as they progressed. But yeah, like it was a wild time. When the worst part of it though, easily, and you've interviewed Lamont, so you can understand this a little bit. When I first took that job, I was only getting paid $50,000 a year to be the head coach of both programs. $50,000 a year in the Bay Area, not cute, not at all, definitely not sexy. I had a 1-bedroom apartment. Lamont and Lauren, when they came on as assistants, they needed their foot in the door as coaches. That's why they took the job. We were all friends. We understood, like, hey, listen, I can give you an opportunity. I don't know about this money thing, but I can give you an opportunity. Those people were splitting $20,000.
Oh.
So they all lived in my apartment. All of us in this little apartment trying not to kill each other because we have to see each other 24 hours a day. It's not like work's over, go home. Like, nah, I got to come home and Lamont's watching WWE. Like, it's madness. Okay. So, you know, it was incredible that we were able to pull all this off with no facilities, with no real structure. And while the school itself learned how to do the business of college athletics. So after we won the 2013 titles, we were now 2 ADs past the man that hired me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Jamie Williams had left to go to University of Nebraska. They brought another guy in who was there for 6 months. And then the last person that I worked under was named Colin Preston. So we're on our third.
That changes things.
Oh yeah, very much so. And when we left indoor, when we got back to San Francisco, I told the AD, I was like, listen, you know I'm not doing this for $50K rent next year, right? Like that's not a thing. So, you know, they eventually, the president of the university eventually renegotiated my contract and paid me $100,000. And Colin did the work to get the assistant budgets up to a legitimate $80,000 budget, which allowed everybody to eat. You know
right,
what I mean?
yeah.
And move on their own and stuff like that. So we didn't just build the national championship program. We built the structure of the athletic department as a whole. There were a bunch of coaches on the staff that were like, well, how is it that the track team can thrive and we're just struggling? I was like, because you guys are coming at this the wrong way. Like a lot of the recruiting strategies, we invented that stuff. A lot of the study structures, all of that stuff. Like we were just teaching how to do things the right way across the board.
See, and that's so good for our sport overall. You know, what they say, a rising tide raises all ships. So you guys earning more money there, that's good for our sport, for all the track and field coaches. That's awesome.
And there's a lot of, you know, subcategories that were important to me. Like RU is the only place I've ever worked at where the track team was the focal point of the university.
Oh,
like that,
sure.
That's not a thing. That doesn't happen anywhere, right? I mean, they wanted the basketball team to be good, but it's harder to do that. It's a team sport. It's a ball sport. You can't just find a bunch of D2 athletes that want to be artists and play basketball at the same time. Like, it's a harder thing to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I'm pretty certain when I took that job, I'm pretty sure I was the youngest head coach in the country.
Hmm.
And I'm also African American. So there's a weight of that. There's a responsibility of that that I had to be aware of, and had to make sure that I did things above board and did things the right way. Because if I failed, if I somehow brought stain to what I was doing, that was not only going to hurt and crush me, that was also going to hurt and crush opportunities for people like me. And so,
So I don't have any perspective of that for a
sure,
lot of obvious reasons. I wasn't head coach. I'm not African American. Are those pressures that pressure that you identified there, is that external, internal, or maybe a combination?
it's absolutely both.
Hmm.
It's absolutely both. I would, when I took the job, a lot of people in my industry were dumbfounded that I would even do that, because they thought, how hard is that going to be?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the period where you get text messages like, hey, well, you took it, don't screw it up. You know what I
Okay.
mean? You got eyes on you, don't screw it up. When
I laughed thinking that was like friends saying just don't screw it up. You're saying don't screw it
No,
up for other
us. Yeah.
coaches. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
When we won the national titles, we were accused of cheating. We were accused of giving kids steroids. We were accused of all kind of stuff. And, when you kick in the door and knock out powerhouses, people get a little pissed off. And I get that. I enjoyed that. As long as, the only parts of that kind of stuff that ever bothered me were when our kids took it, personal.
Mm.
Like, coach, what do you mean they're cheating? I came here because I wanted to be an artist. I understand that. Don't worry about it. Answer them on the track. You know what I mean? Like, it was that kind of stuff. And so
Mhm.
that's why my departure of ArtU I took so personal, because there was a lot of misinformation out there in the ether. There were a lot of things being said that were fundamentally untrue, and it was a really bad look at the time. And it wasn't just, oh, I lost this job that I really, really loved. Oh, I got to move away from my home where my family is. Oh, I have to give up this program that I built from scratch. All of that would have been anger enough. But yes, it's see, he screwed up. See, he did something stupid. See, he broke rules. None of that.
I
Not
learned
any of that was real.
I learned so much from Brooks Johnson's interview, and one of the things that he said many things that have stuck with me since then. But one of the things that he said that has really come to light for me is, and it was actually quoting another coach, and I can't remember who it was, unfortunately. But he said, "If you're not in the huddle, you don't know the play. So
Yep,
if you're not at RU during this time, you're on the outside. You're not in the huddle. You don't know what's going on in that program. You're guessing. And your ego and maybe your jealousy and things like that are playing into your thought process of how it's getting done in San Francisco."
that's right. And so, my departure at that time, it 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 wasn't good, and I was really bitter about it. Um, at the end of the day, uh, you know, at the end of the day, I know that I learned a lot more from my departure from that school, and how I had to process it. Um, and it made me a better human being. It made me a better man. Uh, it made me a better professional, because I had to sit back and take it and learn how
Hmm.
to really deal with how cutthroat and how ugly the business side of all of this stuff can be. But to Richie Bean's credit, he was the one person in the summer of 2015 who took the time to listen to me. Because again, when you have 2 national championships, when you're the national coach of the year, and you are unceremoniously dismissed in the middle of a season, people think the worst.
Right.
People think you violated some NCAA rules. People think you did something to a kid. None of that. And I had the proof that none of that was real. Richie Bean listened to me, gave me a legitimate interview. And once I sent him all the documents that I had to prove that I had done absolutely nothing against any kind of violation of any rules, he was like, oh man, well, can we afford you? And I said, I literally told him, I was like, Coach Bean, listen to me. I don't care what you have available to pay me. I don't do this for money. This is the first job that I've ever even made any kind of real money. I was like, whatever the money is, it is. I want to come back to Division I, and I want to continue to do what I do, which is rebuild programs and win. And he brought me down to, Montgomery, Alabama, and we had a fantastic, 4-year run.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me knowing Richie Bean, who I've got to get. I think we may have him on here very soon in the next few weeks. He's in the queue.
Oh yeah, you got to get Richie on.
Yeah, super excited because he is just one of the most authentic, real humans
Yes.
out there. I love that man to death. And you were in Montgomery, Alabama. You're in my neck of the woods. So I grew up in Eufaula. I don't know if you ever saw it's not too far from Montgomery, and went to school at Troy University. So we used to go to Montgomery all the time, man.
We done been down that highway many times.
Yeah, exactly. Here's how bad it was when I was in school at Troy. If you had to go, like for dates and stuff, there was no real place to go in Troy besides, so we went to Montgomery all the time, man. There's a Olive Garden.
It's not short. It's not a short trip.
No, and it's not exciting either. It's just
no, definitely not exciting.
Well, hey, we start having to wrap up here, and I'm going to do a disservice. We're going to skip over Alabama State because you guys did doing a great job there.
I can wrap Alabama State up really fast for you.
Okay.
Alabama State, it was the opportunity I had at the time. I did not understand how much value I would ultimately get from that place. HBCU world is a special, special place. And structurally, yes, they have a lot of problems. Some of that is obviously not their fault. Some of it is. But Richie Bean is just a great, great human being. And once again, the opportunity to help those kids, the specific demographic that I had the opportunity to bring in, and the cultural experience of the HBCU world, and the connections and the camaraderie and the spirit of that place is unmatched. It's unlike any place I've ever worked. I was a Power 5, predominantly white institution kid, even though I went, I'm from Richmond, California. I'm an African American. I never lived or even thought about living in the HBCU world. And it's a very special, special place. And what Richie has done long before my arrival, everybody needs to understand that. Richie Bean won titles in the SWAC long before Charles Ryan ever showed up. The difference was what that man did was Richie's a distance coach. And he's made his bones in the distance world. And he's destroyed the SWAC for years. Like Stanford used to destroy people, just beating people down from the 800 to the 10K. And he wanted to get his program to a place where they had more visibility on the national scene. And the fact of the matter is, he couldn't do that in the 10K world. He couldn't do that in the 5K world, not with the level of recruits that you're going to get at a place like that. He wanted to change it and give it a more national profile. And so he brings me in and partners with me. Yeah, I worked under him.
That's a great word.
Boss, but he gave me a voice instantly. He respected my thoughts instantly. He gave me scholarship money instantly. And we rewrote the face of that program. It turned into a sprint dominant program. By my last year in the SWAC, we put 6 out of the 8 girls in the final of the 60-meter dash. Like, he totally turned the program over and rewrote the image of it. And we started seeing kids. We had an 11:20 sprinter. Charmaine Cackney is the SWAC record holder in the women's 100-meter dash. The SWAC record is faster than the ACC record.
That's a great trivia question that everyone would have gotten wrong.
We did so many beautiful things there together, and those kids were so much better served having gone through that experience. Like that, I'll never forget that time. And if it wasn't for that opportunity, I'd never be at Cal-Berkeley. You know what I mean? So, Richie Bean, it would not be dramatic or over speaking to say that Richie Bean saved my career, because people had so many misunderstandings of my exit of Art U he was the only person that gave me an opportunity. And if he doesn't give me that opportunity, I don't even know if I'm still working in this sport.
I love that, the redemption story, and redemption's tough. I don't mean that in a
No, no,
redemption. You have to be down, right? But he gave you that opportunity, and then you said a really interesting descriptor there of how you guys were working together. He partnered with you.
yes, I never felt. I always respected him. It's his program. He's the boss. But I never felt like that was somebody that I had to be subservient to. Like, that's my friend. Like, that's my guy. It was always, I mean, he would ask my advice on things that I didn't have any business technically speaking on. He's the head coach, but he would ask. He would, you know, and it wasn't just me. He would ask Michael Snap. Like, Richie is a truly collaborative person. He's a partner. He's somebody that wants to serve, and he's been serving at that place forever. Richie Bean believes he belongs in our Hall of Fame. Look at his record. Look at the championships he's won.
Doubt.
He belongs to be in our Hall of Fame.
No doubt. Hall of Fame of just humble, authentic servant people. That's you look up servant leadership, and that's the man you find right there.
If the Coaches Association does not put that man in the Hall of Fame one day, it will be a disservice.
I'll tell you what, Charles, and while certainly I know a lot of people want to hear about your time now at Cal-Berkeley, and I'm doing air quotes here, everybody, the big time, the Power Five, and I know you've got stories there, because when I moved, my whole goal was to get to the SEC, to get to the Power Five, and when I got there, I was like, there's a little bit of differences here, but honestly,
let me say this, because I know you got to wrap up. Let me say this about the Power Five.
All right.
I am humbly appreciative of my current position at Cal-Berkeley. And Robin Johnson is a fantastic, fantastic woman to work for.
No doubt.
And I could not be happier. But don't get it twisted. I've never been hell-bent on working in the Power Five. The reason that I'm here is because I wanted to work under Robin Johnson at basically my home university. I'm at home. If it wasn't Berkeley, if it wasn't coming to the Bay, leaving Alabama State, leaving what I had with those kids, leaving what I had with Richie Bean, I didn't need a new job. Montgomery is a nice town. I'm a West Coast kid. I'm never gonna say Montgomery is better than the West Coast.
Right.
But I was happy working at Alabama State. I wasn't happy when I arrived there. I was in a very dark place. I was in a very angry place. Alabama State was great for me, and I loved the work that I did there. But I would not have left there if not to be home. So for me, Berkeley is homecoming, just like it is for Robin Johnson. She grew up here. She went to Berkeley High School. We're here.
That's special.
Yeah, it's a special opportunity, and we're here to rewrite, the books on Berkeley and bring Berkeley to a national power team, just like I've done everywhere else that I've been, just like she's been able to do. Like Robin Johnson is one of the icons in our sport. She's been on 2 Olympic teams. Like, Robin's resume is phenomenal. So if not for the opportunity to come home and serve under her in this place, I wouldn't have done that.
That's
I wanted
awesome.
to come home. So Power Five is cool, and I'm happy to do that. And better facilities, definitely, better money, definitely. But
yeah. I'm glad you're back home, though. That's the key.
Yeah,
absolutely. We're going to wrap it up right there, man. I'm so thankful we got to do this, man. This was, thanks so much. This was great. I had a great time.
Well, listen, much like what Marissa's doing, man, you took this podcast idea that you've had and you run with it. And I definitely have not listened to all of the episodes, because there's a lot of them. But
I'm going to kill you with volume.
but all the ones I've listened to have been absolutely phenomenal. What you're doing is a great thing. And it's a necessary part of our sport. And you're exposing people. You're exposing the audience to the people behind the scenes in our sport. And that's what our sport needs more than anything. So I appreciate it.
That's it, man. Thank you so much. This will be another great podcast. This episode right here, people are going to say great things about it, because you were so humble and authentic, and really a lot of learning there about what it takes to grow a program from the get-go, and missteps and miscalculations and success. I love that. It's the true Cinderella story in that sense. So, man, thank you so much for joining us today. Charles Ryan, ladies and gentlemen.